This is Let's Talk Business with your hosts, Marc Ebinger and Jenevy Sims. Now, here's Marc.
Welcome to Let's Talk Business, a show that highlights and promotes entrepreneurs to learn more about their vision, goals, and marketing strategy. Coming up on the show today, we're going to talk about creating story-based video content for businesses. In studio with us today is Alison Emmert, a video cinematographer and the owner of Indigo Film Productions. Alison, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Marc, for having me again. I'm excited to be here.
We need to get into the design of the logo and what came into that. Let's figure that out today as well. I'm your host, Marc Ebinger, the owner of Crookus Virtual Staffing, a company that specializes in hiring virtual assistants from outside the United States.
And I am your co-host, Jenevy Sims with the Evolve firm, where we create innovative and creative branding strategies for small businesses.
And I'm Kyan Frith. I'm a CFO consultant with KV Impact Consulting.
Awesome. And a quick reminder to follow the Let's Talk Business podcast on all major podcast platforms and social media where you can catch video versions of the show anytime. You can get to everything easily from our website at satalkradio.com. If you're going to be in the San Antonio area on Thursday, May 16th, 2024, be sure to join us at the next Let's Talk Business Mega Business Mixer. That's a lot of business, right? We are expecting 150 local business owners and entrepreneurs on site to mix, mingle, and connect with each other and to do more business. That's a lot of business. Right?
Without a doubt. Not being funny, if you didn't go to the last mixer, you do need to go to this one, hey? Mm-hmm. The feedback from that last mixer was awesome.
It was amazing. It was a lot of fun. There was a great turnout.
So what was your experience at that mixer? We'll just make some mini clips here. So what was your experience, though, seriously?
Just to be able to walk up to people and talk to people that I don't typically see out in the networking world. I mean, I try to get out there as much as possible and go to networking events, but obviously we're not always going to see everybody all the time. And to be able to see some of the people that I've seen previously and some new people to network was great. And to have that professionalism all around you was a great experience.
What did you think about the number? Because there's 150 people that made it there to the event. Do you think that was a good number? Was it too many? Could we do more? What were your thoughts there?
No, I think it was a great number because it gave you the opportunity to just keep moving and talking.
Cool. And did you make some good connections there?
We did. Yes, yeah, absolutely.
That makes it worth it, right? Because we have to drive and then we're there and then blah, blah, blah. Apparently we ran out of drinks early. Quickly because our cups were a little too big.
Too big. That's a big problem.
But hey, next time we're just going to bring more alcohol.
Exactly.
Don't make smaller cups.
Right? I agree.
I mean, it was really interesting. So being one of the co-hosts, I was on the front desk with Kirby. We had a blast, and with Heather too. But for me, it was a real joy because that meant I could say hello to everybody as they came through the front doors. But the feedback I was getting from people as they came through the front doors was, wow. Because literally they opened up the doors and they just heard this cacophony of noise, but really positive. You could just hear a buzz. And I was like, I'm really proud to be a part of this. It made it a really joyful event. Just hearing from the moment they walked through the front doors as there was something really positive. And then post the event, seeing the post go up onto LinkedIn and people commenting and liking and going, that was an exceptional mixer event. I'm like, that was great to be a part of it, to be part of a team of professionals who co-host on the podcast, just hearing these people going, that was something special. I'm like, just brilliant.
Yeah, and then even the buzz afterwards, too, because I know when I posted about it on my social media, I had people responding back, oh, what is that? How do I get a hold of them? And so I'm sure you got a lot of inquiries after that.
Yeah, and we're going to focus on mostly the positives. There was a couple of negatives in there that were like things that could be a little bit better that we're going to tweak a bit and just really, because the whole goal is to make it a great experience for people coming, that they can connect, do business, have some fun, and then feel like, hey, I cannot wait for the next one. We're just going to keep building the momentum on those. So love it. And so we're trying to get you to come and be part of the filming side of that. What are your thoughts there? Because it's like, do you want to participate or do you want to film or whatever there?
I mean, I would love to be in front of everybody with my equipment so that way people can really see
there you go. Yeah,
more of what I actually do. It's one thing walking in and talking to people and networking and telling them what I do. It's another thing to actually show them what I do.
Yeah, and then all of the media coming out of there, or at least video media, because we'd have a photographer there too, but all the video media coming out of there would, of course, be from what you guys had done,
Right.
which would be really cool.
And I'm
I
sure
like
it'd be an
that.
honor for you to be a part of our mixer, you know?
Absolutely.
We'll work on it.
I
All right,
like
cool.
that.
So good times. Well, the next one's going to be coming up on May 16, 2024. So you can get to our website at satalkradio.com. You can get to the tickets there. The first 100 batch of tickets is up for sale now, so we'll get those sold as quick as we can. All right, so welcome back, Allison. Always good to see you. You guys are constantly leveling up what you guys are doing with your video production side. You're involved in some new stuff now.
Yes.
But let's start with your logo. So I want to understand so there's a film can, right?
Yes.
Or is that
It's the film
Reel.
reel, and then you've got Indigo Snake.
okay? So
it's-
what's the inspiration there?
So our name is based off the Texas indigo snake, and if you're not familiar with the Texas indigo snake, it is a non-venomous snake that actually hunts and kills venomous snakes.
Oh,
And the reason why we decided upon that name is because we actually live on 16 acres out in Kennedy, Texas, and we've been there for about 2 years now, a little more than 2 years, and we have not come across a single rattlesnake, knock on wood. But where we're at is an oil field area, so it's very dry, cleared out area. So you would assuming you would see a lot of rattlesnakes. Well, we haven't seen any, but we have seen the indigos on our property. So we know the indigos are essentially kind of keeping our property safe from those poisonous snakes.
okay. So then that's the inspiration for it?
That's the inspiration.
I love
It's just
that.
kind of like, the underdog,
Yeah.
kind of keeping everybody where they need to be, safe and sound, away from all the negative
Okay, cool. So
people,
it's got a
negative
positive
thoughts.
vibe to it.
Yes.
Do you have
I like
snakes
that.
in the UK?
Grass snakes.
Oh, really? That's it? Just grass snakes?
Yeah,
no
no.
poisonous ones?
I've never seen a poisonous snake in my life.
Oh,
Wow.
But the funny thing is, when I moved here, end of July last year, and in August, I'm out in the yard, and I'm not really thinking about what I'm doing, no gloves on, pick up the rock, and see this beautiful little snake all curled up, really pretty markings, coral snake.
yeah.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
But it wasn't bothered by me. It just slid off and disappeared in. And I took a picture because I didn't know what it was, and go back inside, look it up, like, okay, that's not ideal, So yeah, welcome to Texas.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. My son actually caught one of the indigo snakes that was actually kind of trying to go after our quail, because they'll eat the birds and everything. But the snake ended up in our quail coop, and my son went in there, and they're actually very docile snakes, and he went in there and grabbed it out, and that snake was probably about a good 5.5 feet long. Grabbed the snake out, walked it back towards the back of our property, and just let it go, and it just slithered on away.
Wow. So in Hawaii, we don't have any snakes. In fact, if a snake is found on a boat, on a cargo boat, and it gets loose on the island, the whole island shuts down until they find that snake. That's how
Really?
crazy they are.
Really?
It will not
Wow.
thrive. I don't want. Wow.
So define shut down.
Like everything is shut down until they find that snake. Government is everywhere trying to find it. They just had one a couple months ago. I saw on their social media. But they're pretty good at finding them, apparently. So there's a few that get, loose when they're delivering certain cargoes. And, the whole island is out looking
That's
for the snake
crazy.
until it's found.
That is crazy. Does
Wow.
everybody have to wear a mask too? I don't know.
So what if it's like a pet? Like
You're not allowed to have pet snakes.
You're not allowed to have pet
Really?
snakes.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Why are you so concerned about snakes in Hawaii?
Just because there's a lot of natural wildlife there that, that could easily be gone
just
as soon as
ruin
that
the
snake
ecosystem.
comes on.
Makes sense.
New
Yeah.
apex predator come in and just clean house.
So it's really interesting. When I came here, that was a big culture shock for me. But indigo snakes, is that the one that has a little bit of blue in there too?
So yeah, sometimes. So like
Right.
the snake that's on my shirt is actually the color that it is, a black, and it has a little bit of a, but it's so black sometimes it looks blue, and then on the bottom part of it, it has a little bit of a reddish tint to it.
Yeah, it's
So the snake that's
beautiful.
actually on the shirt and on our logo is a Texas indigo snake.
Wow.
So let's talk about you getting into, well, I guess a couple different ways to start this, right? So you're working on a talk show right now for military veterans.
Yes.
How did that come about? How did you guys end up there? And what are you guys doing to kind of develop that side of what you're doing?
Yeah, so we had worked with this client previously. He came in as a referral from another client that we worked with. And to start out, we did testimonial videos for him for a new app that he was releasing. And everything went really great. He loved what we did for him. And then he reached back out about 2 weeks later and said, hey, I have this really great idea for the new year, because this was like right after the new year. And I was like, okay, like, tell me about it and see if we can help. And he said that he wanted to do a podcast. I was like, okay, so why a podcast? He's like, well, I mean, a lot of people are starting to do it. It seems like something that I really want to be able to do also, to be able to talk to some of my previous clients that are vets and see what their experience was like in the military. And I said, okay, cool. I said, but what about maybe just a talk show? If it's just going to be you and them, maybe make it a little more personable. You can move around a little bit more. And he was like, you know what, that's kind of a good idea. Let's try it and see how it works. And so I talked to my wife, Jen, and I told her about it. And she was like, we've never done anything like that. And I was like, I know we haven't, but it seems very interesting. And let's try it out and see how we like it. I mean, we're not going to know if we're not going to like it if we don't try it. And so we gathered up our equipment. We've got, audio, lights, cameras, and we were going to film at where his office is, in the common area of his office, after everybody has gone home and left for the day. And once we filmed our first episode, the first episode was very intriguing. It went on for about longer than we expected, just because the conversation was so good. And we were able to cut it up so that way he had marketing material to put out there for teasers, and then had his full episode released for him. And Jen and I kind of looked at each other and we were like, that was kind of fun. We kind of enjoyed that. We liked being behind the camera, setting everything up, and just making sure everything ran good, and listening to the conversation, and then being able to just put together those highlights and see what the reaction was from his followers about it. And then now all the inquiries that he's getting from people that he knows wanting to be on the show. So we actually just finished filming the third episode, third show over the weekend, which ended up kind of interesting, because we had someone walk in and get in the background of the shot, because we have to apparently rent out the space, even though it's after hours. And but run into a little hiccup there. We were able to fix it and move forward, but we had a great time. It was a lot of fun.
So what's the business of that? What does that look like as far as, and I know Kyan would appreciate, is how many man hours is going into this project, right? Versus the rate, the fee. Does that make good business sense? What kind of adjustments do you think need to be made, if any, in that realm when it comes to the business side of it? Because I know editing, right? You can sit down and you can be hours, and you know it too. You can be hours and hours and hours into it, especially when it comes to drawing out really good clips, which is what I do, right? So how does the business side of that come in for you?
Well, first of all, you've obviously got to know what the storyline is to be able to really know when you're listening, that's a good part to be able to cut out for marketing. That's a good part cut out for marketing. So you already know kind of ahead of time as you're listening through it, and already doing those thoughts in your head to create something. And then really once it's all said and done, the filming is done, after the fact, I think it took me just a weekend to be able to edit everything out and get it back to him. But that was 2 days worth of continuous editing.
Does that make business sense when you work out the hourly rate, or do you see that as something that needs to be adjusted? Because I'm interested in the business aspect of it, because I mean, I know your world very, very well because this is what we do here.
Right.
But and keeping an eye when you're talking about, hey, that's a good clip, that's a good clip. I'm just going to ignore most of those clips. You know what? No, but it's like, well, right, when you're picking out those things, but then you've got a video editor, right?
Yes.
So it's like right now I'm doing a lot of that stuff myself because I'm in between video editors, right?
Yeah.
But when you have a video editor, how do you identify those? You know what I mean? So there's lots of questions I have in that space.
Yeah, so really we'll just kind of mark down bullet points like, hey, when they start talking about this, we want that as something. So that way, whenever we do send the material over to the editor, they know exactly, okay, when you start talking about this or this or this, and we'll do our best to kind of timestamp what we're talking about.
During the flow?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so like in the beginning part, this is what they start talking about. Make a marketing material or a teaser about this, and then sometimes too, what I've also done myself is just trying out to kind of like put a couple different things together. It may not be something that is completely in order, but to make it sound intriguing and interesting about the conversation that's going on, you know, put together something that will get someone looking at it and say, whoa, I got to watch that.
Yeah, that's whole part of the planning thing, right?
Yeah.
But when you first started thinking about starting your business, you've obviously come from a background in it, right? And so when you've already had that experience, you kind of think like, okay, this is what I'm going to do in my business. This is not what I'm going to do in my business, and kind of map out a different business strategy for yourself. So when you and your wife were building this business and the brand, what was it that you were saying, I need to make sure that I don't do this, that my old company or my past experience has taught me. I don't want to bring that into this new business. What was that process for you?
I think it was more, and I think that's a lot of the reason why we ended up hiring Crocus too, is because a lot of the hours that are spent editing, you know, I like editing, but at the same time too, I like building my business more.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
And so business-wise, that was one of the things that we have figured out going into it. And then a little bit into building the business, we realized that a lot of the editing was going to be very tedious and you know, it's going to be a long time. And so we decided to hire a editor, which has proven to be very beneficial.
Yeah.
Because again, we're able to work on our business and build our business opposed to working in the business 24/7. And it allows us to expand and grow.
And you can keep your costs down too, right? I mean, because you're outsourcing,
Yes.
it's not $40 an hour, right? I mean, it's a lot less than that. So you can
Yes.
leverage that well,
Absolutely.
keep the price down for your clients. Right.
Yes.
But then at the same time, I mean, so the numbers aspect is really interesting. You know, we were talking to Samantha just recently, you know, about the rate that she's charging for her events. And I worked with Samantha, and one of the questions I'd asked her was, okay, great. So you've gone and done this event, but how many hours have you spent preparing that event? And when she told me, and I just sat there, I worked some out in my head, obviously, but I wanted to prove it to her. So I just called up on the phone and said, this is how much you're basically earning per hour. Are you comfortable with that? And she was like, no, I'm not. And so I'm wondering for yourself, and like you said a moment ago that with the talk show, it was only a weekend, 2 full days. Yeah. But like, that's a big cost.
It is.
And
Really, really
that's
big
a whole
cost.
weekend that's gone.
Yeah.
That it was at least, I would say about 12 to 16 hours worth of editing.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way I'm thinking is, okay, so how much are you charging the client? And actually, if you then take into account your time there, does it still stack up? And, you know, if you were to really charge your time out of the value of your time, would it then be a point where actually the client would be able to afford that because that's just too much? and so you have to compromise, and so you ultimately you're taking a lesser sum. So actually, that's where it makes sense to outsource. But then do you outsource everything because you've gone and lost a weekend?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So
What's your tipping point there? And picking up on what Jenevy was saying, there is, what have you learned from the past that you're not going to do it again? Like in the past, did you work weekends and you're still working weekends? Do you need to adjust the way that you do things?
Yeah.
You know, to get your time back?
Absolutely. And we're not working weekends is something that we strive to. If we have to film on a weekend, that's different.
Right.
Going out and
That's
filming.
fun.
It's fun.
It is.
Exactly.
Do you still see it as fun?
Well, the
Filming? Oh,
editing
absolutely.
process is just so tedious.
Yeah.
I mean, it's mentally exhausting because it does take a lot of creative thought and process to it. It's time consuming. You know what I mean? And it's okay to do it once in a while, but you don't want to have to do it day in, day out,
Right.
which is why I think, in your example about Samantha is really stood out for me, and also your conversations with me as well. It's like we got to figure out and make sure that we're charging appropriately, that it's sustainable for the client, and figuring all of that out. So that's really where I'm most curious is how do you flush that out? It's trial and error, right? We got to figure
is.
it out.
Yeah. So what we are charging right now is definitely not something that would be sustainable if I continue what I'm doing now, because it just wouldn't make any sense as far as the amount of hours, amount of time that I'm working on it, opposed to having delegate out the editing process. That makes a lot more sense to do it that way. We're on set for about an hour filming, and it takes us maybe 20 minutes to get all set up, 30 minutes to get set up, and then maybe another 15 to break everything down. So you're looking roughly about 2 hours total in that day, filming, setting up. And then once we're done with that, then, whenever I edit myself, I'm looking at 10 hours maybe of editing everything out. And what we're charging, like I said, wouldn't make any sense if I continued doing it myself, which is why we delegate the editing out, so that way we open up that time and be able to keep that cost down for the client. So that way it's more reasonable and more achievable for the client to be able to grow their business.
You can scale too.
Yeah.
It allows
it's
you
always
to
about
scale.
scaling. Yeah. And that's, I think as a business owner, that's the toughest question to be asked when you start your entrepreneurship journey is, how much are you charging? When I first started mine, a lot of my mentors are like, you're not paying yourself enough. I said, but I'm trying to focus on growing my business. And so I had all these ideas in my head in order to grow. Maybe there's some times that, I'll take some pro bono work to increase my my portfolio. And then you find out like how much time is going into that. And it's all trial and error as an entrepreneur. And I think that you have found like a pretty good balance, right? As far as figure out how to scale and being in a network of people like Marc here, to show you that there's other ways to scale and to increase revenue without sacrificing your weekends, and that's a new thing is like, what is the non-negotiable for you? Mm-hmm. What is the non-negotiable for your business? And starting that off, you ever heard that quote that says, whatever you tolerate, you authorize to stay? So if there's times that you just don't want to give up a weekend, then that's, you're going to set the tone for the rest of your business. And
Right.
These are the thoughts and these are the things in the process that you go through as an entrepreneur.
Right.
But it's interesting what Alison's experiencing. It's replicated, isn't it, across so many businesses?
Oh, yeah.
They go, I need to do this, because that's how I keep the cost down. But there's a cost to you and your weekend.
Mm-hmm.
There's an impact there. And people don't think about that side of things.
Right. And something that I've discussed with my wife as well, and we are both on the same page, as an entrepreneur, especially whenever you're starting up, you're going to have those times where you're going to have to sacrifice your weekends, your holidays, whatever the case, to be able to get your business to that point. And I think right now we are at that prime time of our business journey
Tipping.
to where we are kind of right on that fence line where we're like, we're just about there to where we don't have to sacrifice anymore, but we still have to a little bit just to make sure that we get to that point where we can just completely start scaling.
So how will you know when you've reached that tipping point?
Once we're able to know that we have everything, it's the complete process is in order. And we're still trying to put that process together and piece it in and puzzle it in to be able to know when we do this, X, Y, and Z is going to happen. And it just gets done.
So what part of your process are you like working on? What's still the unknown?
The unknown right now is trying to figure out how we can better schedule ourselves. Right now, we are not only trying to grow our business, but we're also trying to be a employee as well, through other jobs to be able to kind of make ends meet for the time being. As a business owner, we've all been through that at that point, but we're at that point where it's just trying to get those schedules in place and be able to say, you know what, these are our availabilities. This is what it's going to be. Because right now we have a lot of clients that'll call us last minute kind of thing. Hey, are y'all available? And, you know, we want to be able to make that money. We want to be able to give that client the customer experience, you know, the experience that we can give them, that they're looking for. And by doing so, we're kind of running ourselves into the ground a little bit because we're making ourselves almost too available. And I feel like that in itself is putting us in a position where we kind of need to scale back a little bit and be like, okay, we've got our time frames and this is what it's going to be. And if you can't, it's trying to work through all those different areas
Sure, yeah.
of
Boundaries.
scheduling and boundaries, exactly, and knowing exactly when to say no.
Yes.
And that is very, very hard as an entrepreneur
it's
of
difficult.
saying no. I think it's actually
Absolutely
two letters
difficult.
that most entrepreneurs
Yes.
just can't audibly produce.
Yeah.
But you've touched on an aspect there today that I think so many small business and entrepreneurs have a difficulty with, and I see it so many times as a CFO consultant, is that they've not considered process. They've built out a business and they're doing, they're gaining clients, they're growing, but there's no process, there's no infrastructure in place to actually help them to scale, as we've been talking about earlier. And actually, if you deal with some of these things earlier on, it's so much easier to scale from that position of strength because you've got your house in order, is how I put it. You know, you're prepared and you're equipped to now build out. So actually, putting the technology in place even. So it's like almost like mind mapping and writing it down in black and white if you need to and go, okay, this is how I want it to flow. How can I make this easier? What technologies could I put in place? How could I structure my time, my calendar, etc.? And if you start to think like that, all of a sudden the pieces of the jigsaw start to come together and the picture looks very, very different. And just you're setting yourself up for massive success. But people don't think like that. A lot of the time.
It's a little
But they think about it
difficult,
a few years down the line. And so invariably the business has scaled up and they go, all of a sudden, they're like, I need an ERP solution. I need to do this. But actually the cost then is far greater than if you'd gone and dealt with it much, much earlier on. You know?
So how are your processes when it comes to, you know, an example where somebody's short notice wants to come in and it's going to maybe be on a weekend or be somewhere where you need to be able to fill that in? Do you have that process in place to be able to do that and still come out ahead, right? Making a profit off of it.
We haven't actually gotten to that point where we've figured out completely what that process is. We are still trying to puzzle that together or piece it together, but we are actively trying to build that framework and that foundation to be able to grow and replicate later on down the road.
What's the biggest piece you're missing?
I think the biggest piece we're probably missing right now is honestly, like the structure itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think
What do you mean by that? What structure?
the structure being you've got a client calling in, and so let me back up real quick. We've got the process down after the fact that we filmed,
Mm-hmm.
right? So the process is you get the clips, we send it over to the editor, give the editor the instructions. That whole process is set. We're good on that part. It's the front end part.
Right.
Pre-sale.
Pre-sale.
Okay. Well, let's quickly walk through that. What does that look
Okay.
like?
Well, typically we get a lot of our clientele it's referral based. So people that do reach out to us, they've talked to someone else that has previously used us and has, talked good about us, thankfully. No. But that they reach back out and they say, hey, I talked to so-and-so. I want to be able to make a video or social media content, or like we were talking about, I want to try a talk show. Can you do it? And our whole process, I think that we're missing the pre-sale part, is to set those expectations
Right.
ahead of time.
Like time
Time-wise,
frames, yeah.
Here's
the timeline.
This is what we need in advance. This is the time frame that we need it in. Like there's a whole process that goes into a production, and we need that time to be able to storyboard if we have to pre-production, to get all of our shots in order. And right now as I mentioned, we're at that point where it's hard to say no right now. We're
Well, you
putting
figure it out
ourselves
as you
in a
go.
position where we're almost
Yeah.
scrambling, kind of.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like we have that process that we need to be able to really
Okay, so
put all our ducks
Right.
in a row prior to
are you
the
able
production.
to create that process? Are
Yes.
you okay? And it's not created, correct?
Well, not,
not
yet.
created
So
yet.
here's the thing, though. When you're coming from a creative aspect, it's gonna be a case by case, because the post-production process for a talk show is gonna be different from post-production on a podcast. So that's where I could see where for her it's kind of a bit of a challenge, because my time spent creating the storyboard and everything that we need for your show is going to be different from somebody else's show who may be outdoors, or different elements in there. So I could see, as a creative point of view, because I was struggling with that too. As a graphic designer, when I first started my business, I'm good at the production side. I'm good at the creative side. But to tell somebody, hey, here's the upfront cost right away, when we haven't even sat down and talked about it yet. See what your expectations are, what's your time frame, what's your budget. That's why it's very important for us to have what's called a creative brief. And then from that point, then we can set expectations. But it's hard to just call and say, hey, what's your price right now? But we haven't talked what you needed yet.
But that is the first step then, right? That's the creative brief.
So the first step, what we're trying to put in place, is a strategy session.
Okay.
Creative brief. And that's basically just to sit down with the potential client and just talk about what it is that they're looking for, to even see if we're even the right fit for that job.
Okay.
Because we're going to tell them, yes, we can do this, or you know
Or
what?
no.
Or
No.
let me
Or no,
refer to
it's
you.
probably
but
not
to
a
this,
good idea.
But to this time frame, the way I'm listening to this at the moment is that you've got various channels that you can go down. So I'm just picturing, almost like looking at these walls here, it's like having a flow chart, and you go down this line, yes, no, maybe, and you just follow that down. And actually, it's not overly complicated. It's just very straightforward kind of flow chart, and you can do it all pretty pictures, so it's all creative still. But you just follow those channels down. And by doing that, though, and having that structure there, actually, when you're saying potentially no, that this is a process, if you want to do this within this brief, no problem at all. We would love to help you, but we need to schedule it for this time. Now, I appreciate that as an entrepreneur, and you're just starting out and you're trying to get your name out there, that whole saying no right now, but I can schedule you for then, is hard. However, there's a really good friend of mine back in Guernsey, where I used to work in the Channel Islands, and he started up a project management office, okay? brilliant guy. It was just him. Then he took on another person and another one left, blah, blah. They started off really small, but he was very good at saying no, or I'd love to, but not now. And what it actually did is instead of turning business away, it created a lead generation and actually created work. And his business now, a few years down the line, has exploded. And it's amazing that they're taking on so many consultants. They've grown from Guernsey to Jersey to other jurisdictions. And actually that's saying, they're having the confidence to go, I want to help, but actually enabled his business to grow. It seems counterintuitive.
Well, it's a pipeline. You're filling a pipeline of business.
But it worked.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But when you protect the client by having structure and processes in place, it creates a better experience, customer journey for them, and it's better for you guys. Mm-hmm. But it's just a matter of sitting down and creating that flow so that when anybody comes in, they can fit into the overall structure, and then you can get like niched down as you go through it. And then every time you do a project, create its process documentation as you go through it. So now you've got one where somebody wants a show, or even a podcast could kind of fit probably close to that.
Right.
And then if they want social media content, whatever, you just have that process in place. But it's just process documentation, which is, that's why I was so curious how you were going to jump in on this conversation, because that's your world.
Yeah,
is
it is.
creating process documentation.
The process and finding efficiency. Because a lot of the time, if you do this stuff, you're going to make your life so much easier. And you get to a point where you go, okay, well, actually, for this one, if you want it quicker, I can do it, but there's a premium to that. And you give the client then the choice, and they go, no, I'm happy to do that. You go, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
You know? And so all of a sudden now you created a premium product if that client really needs that. You know?
And we actually have started doing that.
Awesome.
Yeah. So like priority editing.
We've
done priority editing. So it's an upcharge for that. So we are able to, and not only priority editing, but we're also able to utilize that in a recurring monthly fee.
There you
Nice.
go.
And I'm
That's
curious
very
too,
good.
like Jenevy, Genevy's a consummate professional, right, in what she's doing. And she doesn't hurry up to rush. She's got processes in place. And you're very also good at communication, so that the hot to trot guy that wants to get everything done, and you're like, okay, well, this is what we're going to do first, and then we need to do this, and where's this at? She asks great questions. So when it comes to process, not documentation, but just like processes, when it comes to the creative side of it, what would be your recommendation on where to start with something like this?
With something like that, I mean, I would say talk to Kyan, have a mentor, coach to help you, because for us as creatives, I'm very in tune to my part, which is the creative part. So to make me sit down and go through a process and write down, I used to be part of a company where we had to log in hours. And I hated that because, okay, so 3 hours to do a website, but then now I'm limited. So your creativity flow is not going to be there because now you're rushed. When I talked to a mentor, what I did was I told him my process, and then him coming from the business side kind of took a step back and said, okay, so what I'm hearing is you need this amount of work to get the creativity part flowing, to get inspiration, to put together a vision board, to get together palettes, things like that. So what he did was he created the structure after what I just said I needed to do to become creative, to be able to create what the client is asking for, because I have a different process. Because there's times where I just need to put my headphones on and just be on the computer and start coding or start designing. But then there's other times as a business owner, you have to be in front of that client. You have to talk to them, and then you have to set the expectations. So me, as a freelancer before, I said, I can get it to you whenever I can get it to you, whenever I'm done. That doesn't work in the business world. That doesn't work in the professional world. So to set those expectations, and that's why it is important to kind of time yourself prior to see how long it's going to take you to do a certain project. So in that way, you set the expectations right up at the front and give yourself some time. Mm-hmm. Say, if it's going to take you 2 to 3 days and you've timed yourself, like this is how much it's going to take from post-production to actual production and then the final editing, then give your client 3 to 4 business days. because then that will allow you to also exceed expectations
Right.
and say, hey, I got it done in 2 days, but you're giving them the 3 to 4 business days just in case.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yes.
it's really interesting. I think we're touching on an aspect here that I think a lot of entrepreneurs don't do is actually understand what they're doing with their time and where their time is going. And then actually understand the value of their time. When they're doing client work, are they actually charging the right amount for it? What are they getting themselves involved with? Are they doing things that actually ought to be outsourced to virtual staffers? Are they doing things that actually it'd be better off if that person did it? Actually, are they, and it's just working that through. And I mean, I'd almost be suggesting to you, Alison, if for the next month, you just record your time. Just understand, not from any financial perspective, but just see where's the time going.
Right.
I'd say the same thing to Mark. Like, what are you doing with your time? Well, I would maybe for some people it's like, oh my gosh, look how much time I'm spending just scrolling on social media. Like, I want to scale that back. I'm now actually going to put in, I'm going to just have quarter of an hour first thing in the morning, quarter of an hour in the evening, bang. And I've now gained some more time that's actually going to be much more valuable used elsewhere. And it could just be a really interesting exercise.
Yeah, it makes you very intentional with your time.
Very intentional.
So what I do, like I set my alarm for 30 minutes. Everything is in 30-minute increments, as well as meetings, 30 minutes. And then I give myself, 10, 15 minutes afterwards, but 30 minutes and start off from there. And then, of course, depending on what you're doing, spread it from an hour or two. But start off with 30 minutes and you'll really realize how much time you're spending in even the small things like social media, traveling, standing in line at Starbucks, those things. And then you can start being accountable for it. Because if you're expecting your clients to pay a certain amount for the time, then you want to be able to give them value that comes with that time.
So there's it's the mega rich people, right? They have a car driver, right? Taking them from point A to point B so that they can be active making phone calls or doing whatever they're doing. They have really honed in on that time.
On what their time is worth.
Yeah, they take a private jet because they don't want their plane to get canceled. They don't want to wait in line. They don't want to whatever. So it's not just a perk. It's also there's a real meaning behind that. And time is the one thing that all of us are on the same playing field with. Even when it comes to client acquisition, just as an example, when I have somebody that says, hey, Mark, I'm interested in the VA services. I talk to them. And then when it's like, okay, we're closed, we're good, they've paid the hiring fee, then it goes to Abby, who handles the hiring process from there. I don't really touch it other than monitoring it as it goes through the process, right? Because I've got that time back. So even for what you guys are doing, when it can come to you make the sale, but then the rest of the process of the sale, somebody else can actually be in charge of, because it's just once you have the process in place, they can run through that. And that's what I created for Abby, and then Abby helped with the process, is system documentation, right? Process documentation. But you can hand that off.
Right.
So somebody else can do that, and then you can refine that down more and more and more on your business, which to me, that's the fun side. Because I was looking to build a business, not a job.
Right.
You know what I mean? But there's still certain aspects I love. Like you love going out and doing the filming, right? And talking with people, figuring out what they want and doing the filming process. Am I right on that? You love that part of it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's kind of what separates us from some of the other people that are in our industry, that, we like to interact and build that rapport with our clients to where they feel comfortable enough to be able to come to us and be like, hey, and I know we talked about this before, but let's try something else instead. And we want to be able to not only keep that process in place, right, once we build it up, but also be able to be flexible enough so our client, again, can still have that good experience and then build a rapport at the same time too. So that way, when we're done with the time that we spent with them, they have something positive to go out and tell someone else. That way we keep having that cycle of referrals coming in.
And the beauty of what we do, because we're both content creation people, is that content lives on for a long time. So when you do it right and everybody loves it, it's really cool because it's always going to be there.
Yeah.
Well, and what I like with the approach you're taking here is you're talking about the really good client experience, but then actually the product that you're producing too is really good quality. Like I love seeing your content because it's just really good. So I think that when my mind is working here with you at the moment, Alison, is the fact that just have the confidence to just go no or love to, but because people are going to still love your content. They're going to love the work you do. They're going to love interacting with you and working with you and having that confidence. Like, and I think there's lots of other business owners really ought to have that confidence.
And I think a lot too, something that we're also starting to realize more and more of, and I'm sure you can attest to this as well, there's so much content out there that needs to be made and that isn't being made, that at this point, when we started our business venture, we were always like, okay, our competitors. We've seen and realized that there's so much content that needs to be made for so many different people and businesses that we really don't feel like we have competition, because we're all in it doing the same thing, because there's so much content that needs to be made, whether it's social media content, talk show content, content for websites, whatever the case may be, that we're all just working together to make sure that content gets created.
Well, what you're talking about now is an abundance mindset, not a lack mentality.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's plenty for everybody.
Yeah, correct.
Do you see the way that the content's going, that there's anything that's not kind of like on the horizon that's going to be a real niche thing? So you can't really talk about it because actually you're going to be taking some content to a whole nother level that nobody else is doing at the moment.
Actually glad you brought that up, because
I like the sparkle that came to your eye. And you're like, ooh, yeah.
There is a couple things that we have been looking into and discussing that is going to really take over fast, I believe.
If folks want to get in touch with you, Alison, how do they do that?
You can either call or text 210-262-1408. They can go to our website, indigofilmpro.com, or they can go check us out on Facebook or Instagram, Indigo Film Pro, Indigo Film Productions on Facebook, and on Instagram it's at indigo.film.pro.
Got it. All right. Thanks a lot. I appreciate that. That was a good session. I thought we dug in a little bit. I think we all learned a little bit and had some fun too. All right, as we wrap up the show, quick reminder, check out our latest podcast and catch video version of the show anytime by visiting our website at satalkradio.com. That's going to do it for this one. Great job, everybody. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.